In the village of La Mancha in Spain, there once lived a gentleman of about 50 who loved to read books about knights and heroes and their great adventures. Because he was a reasonably wealthy man, he had plenty of time for reading.
This is such a beautiful passage, Niece. Listen, the high heavens that with their stars divinely fortify you in your divinity and make you deserving of the desert that your greatness deserves.
But, Uncle, that doesn't mean anything. It's pure nonsense. And this story you've been reading to me, it could never have really happened.
What do you mean? Of course it happened. Everyone knows that Amadis of Gaul was the greatest knight that ever lived.
But even the greatest knight couldn't have killed 3 giants with one sword stroke. To begin with, there's no such thing as a giant. And even if giants existed, how could anyone kill 3 in one blow? It's impossible. Why don't you put that book down, Uncle, and come have some dinner with us?
Not now, not now. First, I must see whether our hero is able to rescue the fair Princess Paulina from the dreadful ogre holding her captive.
Don Quixote buried himself in books. He spent the nights reading from twilight till daybreak, and the days from dawn till dark. Eventually, from little sleep and much reading, his brain dried up, and he lost his wits.
Then Don Quixote fell into the strangest fancy that ever a madman had seen. He decided that he should become a knight errant, a knight traveling through the world on a horse and wearing armor in search of adventures.
What are you doing, Uncle?
I'm cleaning my armor, Niece.
Your armor? But that suit of armor has been standing in the back corner of the house for years, rusting and collecting dust.
It is very important for a knight errant to keep his armor well cleaned.
A knight errant? What are you talking about?
This is very bad. This helmet has no visor. What am I going to do about a visor?
Uncle, I'm getting worried about you.
Well, I'll have to get some pasteboard and make one.
You're making a visor out of pasteboard? Uncle, the heat must be getting to you. Come and have a cold drink with me.
I've decided to name my steed Rocinante. I think the name has a truly grand sound to it. Very noble and distinguished. What do you think?
What steed are you talking about, Uncle? You can't mean your old hunting horse out in the barn. That horse is nothing but skin and bones.
Rocinante! Rocinante! I shall ride forth on Rocinante and do great deeds in the name of the Lady Dulcinea del Toboso.
Who's this Lady Dulcinea? We don't know any Lady Dulcinea.
She is a princess, the fairest and most virtuous lady in all the world. She inspires me in everything I do.
Uncle, I'm fairly certain there are no princesses in Toboso. There are only merchants, wives, and farm girls. Uncle, are you sure you're feeling okay? Should I call the doctor for you?
The next morning, Don Quixote begins his career as a knight errant. He puts on his armor and his helmet with its pasteboard visor, slings on his shield, grabs his lance, and mounts Rocinante.
He's only barely out into the open country, however, when he discovers a problem with his plan.
Oh no, I just remembered. The laws of chivalry forbid my taking arms against any other knight until I've been knighted, and I've not been properly knighted.
After mulling over this problem for a while, Don Quixote comes up with a solution.
I'll just have to have myself knighted by the first man I meet on the road. I've read a number of books in which it was done this way.
Satisfied with this solution, Don Quixote rides on, talking to himself.
Who can doubt that in ages to come the story of my famous deeds shall be widely told? How fortunate those ages will be, for my deeds shall be worthy to be engraved in bronze, carved in marble, and painted on wood.
Sometimes he calls out the name of Dulcinea.
O Princess Dulcinea, mistress of this captive heart, you commanded me not to appear before your beauteous presence, and that has wounded me deeply. Be merciful toward the one who suffers much for you.
By nightfall, both Don Quixote and his horse are weary and very hungry. Don Quixote looks in all directions for a shepherd's hut or a castle where he might take shelter. Finally, he spots an inn which seems to be a fortress with 4 towers, a drawbridge, and a moat.
A short distance from the inn, Don Quixote stops. He waits for a dwarf to sound a trumpet from the castle wall, announcing his approach, for this is what always happens to knights in the books he reads. 2 maids standing at the door to the inn watch his strange behavior with fascination.
What's he doing sitting there like that?
And why is he wearing that ridiculous getup?
Somewhere nearby, a swineherd blows a horn to call his hogs together. Don Quixote thinks a dwarf is giving notice of his arrival at the castle. He rides up to the inn door.
Good evening, fair ladies.
Both women back away from the crazy-looking man who's approaching with a spear in his hand.
Did he just call us fair ladies?
I beg you, ladies, not to run away in fear, for I follow the code of chivalry and would harm no innocent being, especially not fair maidens of your high rank.
Both women start laughing.
Listen to him. He thinks we're fair maidens of high rank.
The innkeeper comes to the door where he sees ridiculous-looking Don Quixote and the laughing woman. He decides to get in on the fun.
If your worship is looking for a place to rest, Sir Knight, we have plenty of everything at this inn, except for beds. It's not a fancy place, and there are no beds left, but we will give you whatever other hospitalities we can.
For me, sir, whatever you have is enough. My only ornaments are my arms. My rest is the bloody fray.
The women erupt into more hysterical laughter and continue laughing while Don Quixote awkwardly dismounts from Rocinante and hands the reins to the innkeeper.
Please take good care of my steed, for no better piece of horseflesh ever munched oats in all the world.
The innkeeper stares at the bony body of Rocinante, then winks at the maids. When he returns from stabling the horse, the innkeeper finds the 2 women helping Don Quixote get out of his armor.
Well, I've got the rest of it, but I can't get this helmet off. We'll have to cut these ribbons that are holding the board visor on.
No, no, don't cut off my visor. I spent so much time attaching it.
I just don't think there's any other way we can get your helmet off.
Then I shall leave it on.
As you wish, Sir Knight.
Would you like anything to eat, Sir Knight?
I would gladly take some food, for I think there is nothing that would come more opportunely.
The maids set Don Quixote a table and bring him some baked fish and blackened bread. He soon finds that he can't get anything into his mouth while wearing the helmet and visor. The maids have to help him eat.
Drinking proves to be even more difficult for Don Quixote in his helmet. The laughing maids have to pour wine into Don Quixote's mouth through a straw.
Once he has finished eating, Don Quixote finds the innkeeper, who is in the stables. Don Quixote falls on his knees before the innkeeper.
Never will I arise from where I am till you grant me the favor I beg of you. I ask you to do a thing that will bring you much honor and will benefit the whole human race as well.
Sir, please get up. You're kneeling in mud.
I will not rise until you promise me that you will grant the favor I ask.
Okay, I'll grant the favor.
I had expected no less from your great magnificence, dear sir.
Now, please get up.
Don Quixote gets up.
The favor I ask is this. Will you knight me tomorrow morning? This night I will keep watch over my armor in the chapel of your castle, as is customary, and tomorrow, if you will honor me by knighting me, my dearest wish will be fulfilled, and I will have the right to ride through all corners of the world in search of adventurers.
Wow, this man is really nuts. I could have some real fun with him. I am more than happy to grant you the favor you ask, sir. For in my youth, I too devoted myself in the honorable profession of knighthood. In my search for adventure, I have made it as far as the fish market of Malagra, the tavern of Toledo, and the small marketplace in Segovia. Those were the days.
And then you retired to this castle?
I did. And a fine castle it is, too. But, sir, I'm sorry to report that this castle does not have a chapel.
No chapel? Impossible. Everyone knows that all castles have chapels.
Well, our chapel had to be pulled down in order to rebuild, you see. You can watch your armor in the hallway tonight, if that will do, or out in the yard.
Don Quixote decides to watch his armor in the yard that lies on one end of the inn. He gathers all the parts of his armor together and lays it all down on a stone watering trough next to a well. Then he buckles on his shield and begins to pace up and down in front of the trough.
Shortly after nightfall, a package carrier who has been staying at the inn realizes that he has forgotten to give his mules any water. The carrier comes down to fill the watering trough. He decides to move the armor from the trough, but before he can touch it, Don Quixote calls out,
You, whoever you are, rash knight, who comes to touch the armor of the famed Don Quixote de la Mancha, take heed what you do. Do not touch this armor unless you wish to lose your life.
The carrier pays no attention to Don Quixote's speech. He throws the armor off the trough and onto the ground.
Lady Dulcinea, let not your favor and protection fail me as I face this first trial of my knightly career.
Don Quixote raises his lance in both hands and bonks the carrier on the head. The man falls down unconscious. Don Quixote gathers his armor and places it back on the trough. He begins pacing again.
A little later, another man comes to water his mules at the trough. Once again, Don Quixote attacks when the man dares to touch his armor.
O beauteous Lady Dulcinea, now is the time to turn your magnificent eyes on this, your captive knight, and assist him.
When the innkeeper realizes that our guests are being attacked, he decides that he had better knight Don Quixote as soon as possible and end the watching of arms in the yard. He goes down to have a word with Don Quixote.
Seeing as there's no chapel in this castle, it seems to me that there is no need for us to go through a whole night of watching arms. You have watched your arms for 4 hours, and I know for a fact the minimum required of a knight to be is actually 2 hours.
2 hours? Are you sure? I thought the watching of arms had to go on all night.
I'm quite certain that 2 hours is sufficient. Let me see if the fair maidens you met earlier will assist us with the ceremony.
The innkeeper and the maids perform a fake knighting ceremony. The innkeeper reads out of his bookkeeping ledger in a ceremonial tone of voice, mumbling so that Don Quixote cannot hear what he's reading. The two maids try their hardest to keep from giggling. At the end of the reading, the innkeeper taps Don Quixote's shoulder with his sword.
I dub thee Sir Don Quixote de la Mancha.
May your worship become world famous and have great luck in all battles.
Thank you, fair lady. Thank you all, and now I must be going. The open road calls, and there are many who may need my assistance.
Don Quixote rides off in search of adventures. Sometime the next morning, he comes to a crossroad. He stops to consider which road to take.
I believe I will let my horse make the decision. This is what knights errant do in the books I've read.
Don Quixote drops the reins. Immediately, Rocinante begins heading towards his home stable, which is not too far away.
Don Quixote rides along for a couple more miles. Suddenly, in the distance, he sees a group of merchants approaching. Believing a knightly adventure is heading his way, he positions himself in the middle of the road with his lance in his hands. As the merchants come within earshot, he calls out,
You, who may wish to pass this way, confess that there is not in the whole world a more beauteous maiden than the Empress of La Mancha, the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso.
This man must be insane. Look at his armor. He's dressed up like a knight.
He wants us to say something about some lady named Dulcinea before he'll let us pass.
Sir Knight, we do not know who this good lady is that you speak of. Show her to us, and if she is as beauteous as you say, we will most willingly acknowledge her beauty.
If I were to show her to you, then her beauty would be obvious. There wouldn't be any point in your acknowledging it. You must confess her to be the most beautiful woman in the world without seeing her. If you will not, you must do battle with me.
Sir Knight, we're not about to swear on something we don't know is true. Show us at least a small portrait of this lady, Dulcinea.
Yes, yes, we want to see a portrait of your lady, even if the picture shows us that she squints or is humpbacked or that her eyes drip, we will still do what you ask.
Her eyes do not drip, vile scoundrels. She is not squinting or humpback. You shall pay for this blasphemy.
With these words, he begins to charge at the merchants with his lance aimed at them. Fortunately for the merchants, Rocinante trips on a stone and sends Don Quixote flying head over heels into a field.
Don Quixote finds that he cannot get up because his armor is too heavy. He struggles attempting to rise.
Flee not, you band of cowards. It is not my fault, but my horse's that I lie here.
One of the merchants, in a bad mood, dismounts from his own horse and kicks Don Quixote several times in the ribs. Then the merchant grabs Don Quixote's lance and breaks it into little pieces.
Vile scoundrel! Villain!
The merchants all ride off, laughing. They leave Don Quixote lying by the side of the road, unable to rise. He spends the next several hours in this position. To pass the time, he begins reciting poems about famous battles.
Finally, a young man from his own village passes by.
What is this?
As the young man gets near, he hears Don Quixote's voice.
Sir, why are you lying there? Are you okay?
Don Quixote continues reciting poetry. The young man lifts up Don Quixote's visor, dusts off his face, and recognizes him.
Master Quixote, why are you wearing this armor? Who has done this to you?
With great effort, the young man hoists Don Quixote up off the ground and onto Rocinante. Then he leads the battered Don Quixote back to his own home.
Hearing a noise in the yard, Don Quixote's niece and housekeeper rush out of the house with the local priest accompanying them. Both of the women throw their arms around Don Quixote.
Oh, thank heavens you're home. We've all been worried sick about you.
Cease to embrace me, dear ladies, for I am sorely wounded through the fault of my steed. Carry me to my bed, and if possible, call the great Dr. Urganda to examine and cure my wounds.
I found him lying like this in a field. He was reciting poems about chivalry. He was delirious.
Confound those books of chivalry. They have caused all of this. Well, we'll know how to cure him here, and he won't need the great Dr. Urganda. Come along to your room, sir.
They take Don Quixote straight to his bed.
I don't really see any wounds on him, just a lot of bruises.
Indeed, I am bruised all over due to a grievous fall during a fight with 10 of the most monstrous and horrible giants to be found anywhere on earth.
So now there are giants in this deal? Well, don't worry, sir. We'll take care of those giants. You just rest now.
The next day, as Don Quixote sleeps, his niece, housekeeper, and priest all meet in the family library. The priest's friend, Nicholas the barber, has also joined them.
Here, I'll open this window, then we can throw all of his books straight out into the yard and make a giant bonfire out of them.
We might find some books that don't deserve to be burned. We better go through them carefully.
No, let's not bother. None of these books should be pardoned. They're all guilty of causing my uncle's trouble. Throw them all out in the courtyard, or else we can cart them off in the backyard. The bonfire will be less than a nuisance there.
Well, I think we should at least read the titles first. Nicholas, you hand me books one at a time, and we'll decide whether each book should be saved or burned.
Here's the first one.
The priest reads the title out loud.
Amadis of Gaul. I have heard that this was the first book about chivalry printed in this country. It inspired the others that followed. Therefore, it seems to me we should condemn it to the flames without mercy.
No, sir, we shouldn't burn that one. I've heard it's the best book written of its kind. Therefore, it should be pardoned.
All right, we'll grant this one mercy then.
He sets the book aside.
Let's take a look at the other one you've got there.
This one's called The Exploits of Esplandian, the son of Amadis of Gaul.
We spared the father, but let's burn the son. He'll be the foundation of our bonfire. Mistress Housekeeper, throw him into the yard.
The housekeeper takes pleasure in throwing the thick book out of the window.
The book sorting process continues for about an hour until suddenly the group in the library hears Don Quixote's familiar voice shouting upstairs.
Rally around me, valorous knights. We must not lose this tournament.
They all rush upstairs, where they find Don Quixote running around his bedroom, waving his sword in all directions.
Well, sir, it seems to me that you weren't wounded after all. You're up and about already.
Ugh, I am not wounded, but I've been bruised and battered in this tournament.
Please, Uncle, get back into bed. You shouldn't be running around like this. Your health is at risk.
They coax Don Quixote back into bed. That night, the housekeeper rounds up all the remaining books in the library and the other rooms of the house. She builds a huge bonfire.
Let's board up the library doors and plaster over it too, just for good measures.
Yes, that's a good idea. When my uncle asks about his books and library, I'll just make up some kind of a story.
They act quickly. 2 days later, when Don Quixote gets up again, the first thing he does is stroll down towards his library.
That's funny. I used to have a library here. I'm sure of it. But now there is only this wall.
He stops his housekeeper and niece as they come down the hall.
Where is my library? I'm sure it was here a few days ago.
What library? You never had a library.
But I'm sure I did. I had hundreds of books.
There are no books here.
Don Quixote looks confused.
You see, Uncle, an enchanter came one night after you went away, and he got down from the dragon he was riding on and went into your library.
Don Quixote's eyes light up with interest.
I don't know what he did inside, but there was a terrible amount of smoke and fire. When we dared to look at it again, the library and all the books were gone. The enchanter said that his name was the sage Mutan and that he was acting out of an old grudge that he bore against the owner of the books.
He must have said his name was Freston.
Yes, come to think of it, his name might have been Freston. In any case, his name ended with a ton.
Yes, Freston it must have been. He is a great enchanter and an old enemy of mine. I knew that he bore me a grudge. Well, well, I shall have to avenge myself for this great wrong. I must saddle up Rocinante at once and find the evil Freston.
But wouldn't it be better to stay peacefully at home, Uncle? Aren't you enjoying getting some rest?
For a knight errant, my dear niece, there is never rest.
Despite these words to his niece, Don Quixote stays at home quietly for 15 days. He shows no signs of any desire to return to his strange behavior.
I believe my uncle's mental health may be better at last.
Burning those books was the best thing we ever did.
What Don Quixote's niece and housekeeper do not know is that all this while Don Quixote has been looking after some new nightly business. He has been trying to convince a local peasant farmer, Sancho Panza, to become his squire and come along on nightly expeditions.
If you come with me, Sancho, sooner or later an adventure is going to occur in which we win an island, and when we do, I promise that I shall leave you there as governor.
As governor? Really? Me?
Absolutely. But you must be ready to set out with me the day after tomorrow.
Well, all right. I'd like to become governor of an island someday.
Just remember to bring some saddlebags. I'll take care of the rest.
I'm planning to ride this nice donkey of mine.
A donkey? I'm not sure I can allow that.
What's wrong with riding a donkey?
Well, I've never heard of a knight squire riding on a donkey. I don't think it's the done thing.
But this is a very fine donkey.
Well, all right then. Bring the donkey.
2 days later, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza ride out together. Sancho is mounted on his donkey.
Remember what you promised me, Sir Knight? Don't forget about that island you promised me. I'm looking forward to governing it.
I haven't forgotten my promise, and I intend to keep it. The knights of old used to give their squires many fine gifts, and I plan to follow that custom. You may wind up not only as a governor, but also as a count or duke. There's a chance you may even be made king of some distant land or other.
Wow, a king? That'd be even better than a governor.
At that moment, the two riders catch sight of a 30 or 40 windmills standing in the distance on the plain.
Fortune has smiled upon us, Sancho. Look over there, where more than 30 monstrous giants appear. We shall do battle with them. Once we have wiped this wicked brood off of the face of the earth, we can take the spoils and begin to get rich.
Giants? I don't see any giants.
Over there, with the long arms. Did you know that some giants have arms up to 60 miles long?
Those aren't giants. They're windmills. You're mistaking their sails for arms, sir.
It's quite clear, Sancho, that you are totally inexperienced in the matter of adventures. They are indeed giants. If you're afraid, just step aside and stay out of the action.
Saying this, Don Quixote digs his spurs into Rocinante and heads off towards the maiden windmills.
Do not run away, cowards!
Come back. I'm certain those aren't giants. They're windmills.
At that moment, a powerful gust of wind arises, and the sails of the windmills begin to turn.
No matter how many arms you have, I do not fear you.
Don Quixote lifts his eyes to the skies.
Dearest Lady Dulcinea, my soul is yours forever.
Covering himself with his shield and readying his lance, Don Quixote charges to the nearest windmill, thrusting his lance into the sail.
With his lance caught up in the quickly turning sail, Don Quixote is thrown into the air and sent rolling across the plain. The lance snaps into a number of pieces. Seeing that Don Quixote is hurt, Sancho rushes to his side.
I done told you those weren't giants. They're only windmills.
Silence, friend Sancho. Battle situations are always unpredictable. These monstrous forms may now appear to be windmills, but that is only because the enchanter Freston has transformed them.
But why would an enchanter do such a thing?
Have I not told you of the great grudge that Freston bears against me? He is the same enchanter who robbed me of my books and library. Now he intends to rob me of the glory I would have gained in conquering a horde of giants.
Here, sir, let me give you a hand.
Don Quixote collects the piece of his lance and Sancho helps him onto his horse.
I remember reading about a certain Spanish knight named Diego Perez de Vargas. When his weapon was broken in battle, he tore a huge limb from an oak tree and performed great heroic deeds using that limb as a weapon.
Careful with that arm, sir. I think you've hurt it badly.
I intend to tear off an even greater oak limb than the one used by Sir Diego Perez. I will do such deeds with that huge branch that you shall consider yourself lucky to have witnessed it all.
I believe you will, sir. I believe everything you say. But for now, Sir Knight, could you sit a little bit more upright? You seem to be riding lopsided.
This is just the beginning of the many adventures of Don Quixote de la Mancha and his squire Sancho Panza. To read more, pick up a copy of Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. Episodes from Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, adapted by Jennifer Kroll, voiced by John G. Diefenbaker's Grade 10 drama program, directed by Yvonne Abuso.